It was towards the end of 17th century or perhaps later. The date and time seems to be hazy in reference to his existence in Germany. A mysterious man named Narad had arrived in Europe. He was an elusive explorer, a photographer, an alchemist, a naturalist, and a polymath. Some believe that Narad traverses between different time periods of history and present, but not the future. He is afraid of the future. Perhaps he too is like each one of us, afraid to face the fullness of time, terrified of the coming times. As they say, even gods perish at the end of time. Only matter survives. But Narad is not like you and me. He has transformed this fear of the end of times into a joyous game, a perverse act of planting dissonance in time. He enjoys anachronistic superiority, the power to manipulate time. Narad inserts objects, things, artifacts into times where it usually do not belong. They are out of time. It is believed that he met with the sovereigns of the East in 17th century and conceived a wicked plan to plant dissonances where the Firangs came from. The word Firangi was used in 17th century in Persian language, characterizing the people of Europe. The idea was to plant objects of curiosity in this land of Firangi, the Firangistan, which now we broadly term as the West. Aurangzeb, the Mughal emperor of the Indian subcontinent in 17th century, felt he was ignorant of the geography of Europe. He once summoned his teacher and said, "What did you teach me? You told me that Europe was nothing but a small island consisting of Portugal, Holland, and England." Like all those Europeans in 17th century who went to the East as travelers, curious about its newfound land, its people, its culture, Narad went to the West with same curiosity, with same inquisitiveness about its people and culture. I remember a beautiful line from Italo Calvino in Invisible Cities. He says, "Elsewhere is a negative mirror. The traveler recognizes the little that is his, discovering the much that he has not had and will not have." Narad truly traveled within himself to travel elsewhere. Narad's arrival in Europe is ridden with mysterious passages across oceans and voyages across the world. The colonial masters whom he rivaled at the time with knowledge and wisdom shunned the stories of Eastern travelers. He was forever forgotten from history, or possibly made to forget. Many verbal accounts of Romani people traveling through Azerbaijan and Egypt mention the existence of a peculiarly strange Eastern traveler walking along with them, moving through deserts and oases. Some historical records illustrate his arrival with the Portuguese when the explorer Vasco da Gama first managed to cross the Indian Ocean to reach India. Some believe he came with the Dutch on the port of Amsterdam in 17th century, with a fleet returning from the Dutch colonies in Mughal India. It is also believed that Narad dressed up as Dutch missionaries to get on board the sailing vessel, but then later was found to be roaming around on the streets of Amsterdam wearing a turban. Many scholars attribute the painting by Rembrandt of an Oriental man as portrait of Narad, who must have been one of the sitters in his studio. It was during the later half of the 16th century that Rembrandt painted several portraits of men in Oriental costumes. It is unknown to this date who these men were. They were all part of the Dutch Golden Age that depicted men in Oriental costumes. These paintings were called tronies. In modern art historical usage, the term trony is typically restricted to figures not intended to depict an identifiable person. However, recent findings establish a link between this immortal traveler from India and Rembrandt's paintings. But nothing can be for certain about Narad. His place in history is charged with precariousness. His memory is in persistent battle with history. The paradox lies in the fact that he is made to forget and made to remember, both at the same time. He leaves traces behind in the form of photographs and objects, which only now are beginning to make sense in this world. Perhaps that's what he wanted. Perhaps that is part of the grander scheme of things. Perhaps that's what the game of history is all about, a game of hide and seek between realities that we perceive with time. I still wonder why he chose me to be his messenger. Perhaps artists understand their time and place in history. There is something magical about holding things from the past. Instantly, there is a connection with the people who once possessed them. It is as if we are holding lost time in our hands. As soon as I entered that antique shop, this photo album was staring at me as if demanding to be opened. I knew at that moment when I found it, I found yet another trace of Narad. Narad is playing the game and I am the pawn. I do not mind being exploited by history. In a weird way, I already am a product of that exploitation. The clothes that I wear, the language that I speak, I'm already corrupted. Here is an image of Garud, a half bird, half human, a chimera, like this one here. It is believed that Garud stole the somras from the gods. The pot is guarded by snakes who are camouflaged as plants protecting this liquid of immortality. Somras, or Amrit in Sanskrit language means the elixir of life. According to the legend, it came out from deep beneath the surface of the earth during the great churning of the oceans called Samudra Manthan. The inception of the universe, the Big Bang, the origin of time. Garud flies around with this pot of immortality. I have seen Garud with a pot in its hand. It is imprinted in my memory. I cannot get that image out of my mind. But by some strange happenstance, the journeys of Narad and Garud are always coincided. Sightings of Garud are reported by several people who have seen Narad in search of the elixir of life. Narad brought with him the art of alchemy, the expertise to build the philosopher's stone. Many local legends in Germany mention the uncanny meeting of a mystical man from the East with Johann Georg Faust. It is also believed that Narad must have met with Paracelsus, another medical and alchemy expert from Basel in 16th century. But it is not for certain whether Narad imparted the knowledge of immortality and alchemy to his peers in Europe. However, historical traces establish a link between Narad attaining immortality and his arrival in Europe between 17th and 19th centuries. Narad is an anachronistic time traveler, a man who has already achieved immortality. He is traveling within the interstices of time. He is the awakened one. Alchemists of the world wanted to create gold to eventually make the elixir of life. The original intent for an alchemist is to find a perfect cure for aging. How do we remain eternally youthful? And I wonder why alchemists wanted to create gold. Gold is such an element that do not react with other elements. It survives the test of time. Gold is associated with eternity. In cosmos, gold is one of the basic elements found during the formation of solar systems. Gold is both equally natural and human-made. You need to extract gold from deep below the surface of the earth, like that pot of elixir that Garud flies around with. That also came from deep beneath the surface of the earth. This extraction is a destructive process. Just like a cartographer's hand making lines on a piece of paper dividing nature into human territories, these golden lines are Narad's traces. This act of drawing lines is the same as making maps and territories across geological timelines, reclaiming, rescuing, redeeming the lost time. Narad is creating a dissonance in time, and these are his objects of disturbance. Narad lives in the hope of becoming a memory.